Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. This has been a very difficult and taxing time for the family, certainly. And a number of news outlets have reached out to have an opportunity to speak directly with members of the family, and they've graciously agreed to do that today. And before they have an opportunity to speak, and then there'll be time for some questions, I wanted to attempt to address one of the larger issues, which is how to potentially hold police accountable for criminal acts. This trial was the first time ever, and let's let that sink in for a second, first time ever that any state trooper has been prosecuted in the state of Connecticut. And it's the first time in 17 or 18 years that any law enforcement officer, state or municipal, has been prosecuted for shooting someone. So it almost never happens. So we applaud the hard work and conviction, determination of the Inspector General and his team just for deciding to prosecute the trooper. That's a huge step. Across the country, it doesn't happen very often, even to this day, that police are prosecuted, let alone convicted. So conviction is a big lift because people, generally speaking, like police, trust the police, and count on the police for their own safety, safety of their communities and their families. And they believe cops, generally speaking, do the right thing under difficult circumstances. And that, of course, is true. Police have difficult jobs, but they still have to protect as well as serve. And the closest thing I can get to an analogy is medical malpractice cases, because in a sense, prosecuting police is like professional malpractice in a sense. It took generations for citizens to get comfortable with the idea of holding physicians and surgeons accountable for negligence, because the same thing applies. People like their doctors, they trust their doctors, they think of doctors doing the right thing. And doctors and police get the benefit of the doubt. And it's just going to take time for citizens, the people who serve on juries, to get comfortable with the concept of holding police accountable. The difference, of course, is that in a civil case against doctors for malpractice, no one goes to jail. So the juries are very well aware that if there's a conviction, then the police in question are likely going to do some jail time. So that's a bigger hurdle to get over. But as prosecutions become more frequent, then I think people will get more acclimated to it. In terms of what happened in this particular case, the family is to be applauded also for sticking with it for 2 weeks, for testifying. I've been asked many times how and why this verdict was reached, and I certainly don't know. I haven't spoken to any of the jurors. I can't tell you what their thought process was, but it's their job to determine the facts, and they determined the facts to be something other than what we had hoped for. Whether it's the issue of another officer or two being in harm's way, or whether it's just a simple fact that the defense had two experts who testified, the Inspector General had one expert who testified, and the jury could simply have decided that that gives rise to reasonable doubt. So it could be as simple as that. As you know, we also have the civil case, which is pending, and we're going to start working on that vigorously now that this criminal case is over. It had been stayed pending the outcome of the criminal case because we couldn't have the police testify. For the most part, they'd take the Fifth Amendment, which makes sense, and it would interfere with the criminal prosecution. So we agreed with the prosecutor's office to take a step back. Now that that's done, I'll be reaching out to the Attorney General's office and hope to get the show back on the road here for the civil case. And with respect to the civil case, it's easier to get a judgment or to get a settlement because, number one, burden of proof is a lot different. It's preponderance of the evidence rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. And in these civil cases against police for violation of civil rights, we do not have to prove necessarily recklessness. So those two hurdles, plus no one goes to jail in the civil case. So those hurdles don't have to be dealt with in our case, which is why these civil cases tend to settle more often. So I appreciate your time here, and I'll turn it over to members of the family.
Good afternoon. It's been a long 4 years. First, I want to thank the Inspector General, Robert Devlin, for his hard work trying to prosecute this state trooper. We respect the verdict of the jury, even though we didn't agree, but we respect the verdict of the jury. But we're going to move on. We have another step to take, which is we have a civil case, and we want it to be done sooner. Thank you.
Can you just say your name in relation, ma'am?
My name is Mohammed. First name is O-M-O. Last name is Mohammed, M-O-H-A-M-M-E-D.
And Omo, just very quickly, how are you holding up under the stress of this?
It's been 4 years. It's hard, very stressful. I'm not happy with the verdict, but I respect it because that's the law of the country. But it's not easy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mariam Soulemane. Mubarak Soulemane was my brother. And as my mom has stated, this 4 years has been exhausting, a whirlwind of emotions. And the real justice would be my brother being here today and not having been killed so ruthlessly the way he was by Brian North with 7 gunshots. Yeah, that would be the real justice, to have my brother here today. So we're overwhelmed, we're distraught, and we are not satisfied with the verdict. I want to reiterate that we do thank the Inspector General Devlin for all his hard work for even prosecuting this case and seeing it for what it was, which was an excessive use of force by an officer. But unfortunately, Connecticut wasn't willing to take it all the way. So this is a start, and I hope this is only the beginning for Connecticut to make things right and hold police officers accountable for their actions.
Okay, so questions for me or for the family?
I just wanted to ask, I don't think that this was raised as an issue during the trial. And wondering if you consider an element, hidden elephant in the room. Do you think that race played any role in what happened that day? You can step to the mic.
I wouldn't be able to tell you Brian North's biases, but all I can say is he stepped out of that car, and within 36 seconds, he shot 7 gunshots to my brother, who was seated in a car with the windows up. That's just fatal. That's all I can say about that.
And obviously you dealt with the initial loss, then you had to sit in court and revisit all of that. And do you have a sense today, like, justice is now out of reach for your family, or what is the emotion?
I mean, the whole process was just so mentally taxing, and I mean, there's moments like during the whole process that you have hope, and you're like, okay, you know, I'm hoping the jury saw this for what it is. It was pretty obvious, I mean, to many. And it was disappointing to receive this verdict, but I do not, like as I stated before, I hope this is only the beginning of the journey to hold police officers accountable. I hope this in some way sets a precedent moving forward for other unjust cases of police brutality in Connecticut.
For your attorney, do you think we need to revisit the issue of qualified immunity?
Yes, but that's something that has to be taken up on a national basis. I think politicians and the courts are more in tune now than they were, you know, just a couple of years ago, with what qualified immunity really means and what it does to the families of victims. So even though it's still on the books, it's still a difficult hurdle. It's a little easier now to deal with that through the court system. I don't think we're going to have a problem with qualified immunity in our case. And I'm hopeful that the family can have some modicum of justice through the civil system to hold the state trooper as well as the West Haven city cops who were involved, hold them civilly liable. There's no jail involved, but hopefully they will be found liable, whether it's through a verdict or through a settlement.
What about internal police procedures? We haven't heard that the West Haven Police Department or the command of the state troopers had an internal investigation to decide whether these people, whether the people involved obeyed the rules of the police and the state troopers. In other cases, people get fired. We're not talking about criminal. Has there been any internal discipline that you know of?
Not that I know of, and lawyers in my position are never privy to what goes on, particularly in the internal affairs part of it. So as far as I know, these West Haven police are still on active duty and have been since the time of the incident. But if I have to litigate this case, we'll be taking depositions. And I'm going to have the benefit of all the transcripts from the trial testimony. And that's one of the things that we'll be getting into a little bit. What was going on behind the scenes during the pendency of the criminal case.
And Inspector General Devlin never had the command of the state troopers or the heads of the West Haven Department as prosecution witnesses.
Yeah, I frankly don't see the point of that. We had some discussions about it. Not sure that was going to move the prosecution forward in any real respect in terms of adding, substance, adding facts to the case.
Omo or Mariam, the world kind of got to see your loved one through this case, but I know you took the stand and told us a bit about him, but how can you share a bit of how you knew Mubarak and how you want him to be remembered, what you want his legacy to be?
I mean, as I said throughout these entire 4 years, Mubarak didn't deserve to be taken out the way that he did. He was just such a loving, kind brother, just so thoughtful. Like, he will give you the last, nickel or penny on him. Like, he was the friend that people reached out to. He had friends from all walks of life. He did not discriminate in that regard. And he was so ambitious, incredibly ambitious, like from the youngest age. Like, he was very business savvy, started his own little tie-dye socks business in elementary school. So just, I had no doubt in my mind that he would have went so far beyond his 19 years that he, got on this earth, unfortunately.
Is there a way that you can see mental health professionals being incorporated into a law enforcement response somehow? I know this has been an issue that's been talked about nationally. Do you think that needs to somehow happen?
Yeah, 1,000%. Throughout our entire movement for justice for Mubarak, that's been one of the points that we felt should be enforced. Because police officers obviously do not have the training to deal with those who suffer with mental illness. So whether that be establishing a program for them to them to have a bit more understanding of how to deal with someone who is dealing with mental illness, or having a social worker on the scene, it's definitely something that we have discussed as an initiative or something moving forward.
And Mariam, you said the whole process was just mentally taxing for you. We were all in the courtroom as the body camera footage played over and over again.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you had to hear that?
That was an intense day. I feel like I personally have never watched that video to its entirety. I've just seen snippets of it on the news, and even then I just put my head down. So as someone stated before, it's like you're back there again. It's 4 years ago, it just happened, it's raw, it's fresh. You're angered because it's the room is filled with opposing sides, your family, you're looking at the culprit. It's again emotionally taxing. I can't even describe the emotions, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
If you had to say anything to Brian North, what would you say?
No comment. No comment.
Any other questions?
What do you think about the efficacy of the Police Accountability Act even after the internal report came out criticizing his actions? I'm curious, what do you think?
I'm sorry?
What do you think of the efficacy of the Police Accountability Act even after the verdict happened, even after the report came out criticizing North's actions?
Well, the Police Accountability Act is a big step forward for the state of Connecticut after George Floyd's murder and the criminal trial. And that act led to the appointment of the Inspector General. Before that, as I'm sure you all are aware, it was the state's attorney's office who would decide whether or not to prosecute police. And the police obviously work very closely with the state's attorney's office. They're brothers, essentially. So I think that's one of the reasons why state police had never been prosecuted and why it had been 17 or 18 years since any other law enforcement officer had been prosecuted. And the concept is that the Inspector General is neutral, unbiased, and we were fortunate that he took another look at this case and decided to prosecute. But the law only goes so far. I think there's nothing wrong with the law on the books. I think now it's how juries deal with police being prosecuted.
Would you be willing to take a settlement in the civil suit to avoid relitigating this and re-traumatizing?
Sure. Yeah, I think we all would hope for a settlement rather than have to relitigate it again and hopefully avoid another trial to essentially have to put the same witnesses on the stand and go through the same thing again. But we'll do what we have to do. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.